Listening Comprehension Task 5, made by me, Marcelo Spano Kawaspolo from class 33 1B07 with the name of 33220073. Opening. Good evening, Ms. Ranga. We're back again with today's Listening Comprehension Task 5. My name is Marcelo Spano from class 1B. In today's task, as usual, we have three parts. So the first part is we have a dialogue, and my job is to complete the dialogue. Also for the answers, I wrote it in blue ink. As for the second part, I have to listen to the audio and retell it using my own words. The third part is I have to listen to the dialogue, another dialogue, and then I have to answer the questions and retell the dialogue using my own words. Now let's start with the first part. So this is the first part, complete the dialogue. Let's start. Which culture do you belong to? I was born and raised in America, but my culture was shaped. Is that a multicultural society? Yes, it is. My culture is a diverse mix of customs and traditions of various races and ethnicities. How long has your country been practicing those costumes? Well, it has a long history around 10,000 years ago. What custom do you like the most? I like practicing dining etiquette. That's what makes me American whenever I travel to other countries. What are traditional costumes of men and women in your country? Cowboy hats and boots are American styles, but nowadays jeans and t-shirt are more preferable. You, are you comfortable with the religions and costumes of your culture? Of course, I was born with it. How do people greet each other? Well, it depends on the situations. In an informal communications, people just say hi. Have you ever felt drawn to another land? Yes, I'm interested in Indian culture. I wish I can get there someday to attend a typical of Indian wedding. So that's the first part. Let's continue to the second part. This is the second part. We tell the story. The second part, I will rewrite all the stories from the audio I've heard before, and then I'll tell you the story using my own words. So let's start. The title of this story is Alberto's New Neighbors. Alberto took one look at his new neighbors and knew that his life was going to get more difficult. He watched them arrive in their big, noisy car and watched them get out. There they were, two of them, as big and as noisy as their car, and smelly and stupid as well. Terrible, he thought. How am I going to put up with them? He went to tell Mimi. Mimi was the friend he lived with. Have you seen the new neighbors? He asked her. No, she said. Who are they? Two of them. The ones we don't like. Big, noisy, and stupid, and smelly. Just like they always are. Oh no, said Mimi. How awful. Still, I suppose we can just ignore them. I suppose you're right, agreed Alberto. We'll just have to ignore them. For a few days then, Alberto and Mimi tried to ignore the neighbors. When the neighbors went out for a walk, Alberto and Mimi did say hello to them. When the neighbors were in the garden, Alberto and Mimi went inside. He knew it was okay for a few days, but perhaps inevitably things didn't stay this way. One day, Alberto woke up from his sleep to find one of the neighbors in his garden. Mimi, he shouted, have you seen this? He's in our garden. Look. How terrible, said Mimi. Let's call our staff and make sure they get rid of him immediately. Mimi went off to call their staff. 2 minutes later, Alberto and Mimi had Alberto and Mimi's head of staff was out in the garden, trying to get rid of the unwelcome neighbor. "Go on," he shouted. "Get out of here. Go home." The neighbor didn't say anything but gave Alberto and Mimi's head of staff a dirty look. Then he went back into his garden. Alberto and Mimi felt better, and then he asked the head of staff to prepare their lunch for them. However, it wasn't enough. Over the next few days, Alberto and Mimi often found one or other or both of their new neighbors walking around their own garden. It was terrible. To show how they felt, Alberto and Mimi went into the neighbor's garden at night, when the neighbors were inside, and broke all the flowers. The next morning, one of the neighbors came to talk to Alberto. "Hey," he said. "Hey you." Alberto ignored him. But he continued talking. "You came into our garden last night and broke all the flowers." Alberto didn't say anything but gave his neighbor a dirty look. "Now I'm in trouble," continued his neighbor. "They think I did it." "Who are they?" asked Alberto. "My owners, of course," replied the neighbor. "Owners?" replied Alberto. "We have stuff." Alberto went to tell Mimi that the neighbors didn't have stuff, but owners. "That's not a surprise," said Mimi. "That explains everything. That's why they're so nosy and smelly and stupid. We need to make their owners become starved." The next day, Alberto and Mimi were actually very friendly with their new neighbors. They tried to explain how to make their owner become stuffed. "Listen," said Alberto to them. "It's very easy. First, understand that the house is your house, not theirs. And second," said Mimi, "make sure that you are always clean. Make sure they give you food whenever you want. Sit on the newspaper while they were reading it. Sleep as much as possible on their beds. And finally, try not to bark, but to meow instead." But it was no good. The neighbors just didn't understand. After a week, they gave up. "It's no good," said Mimi. "They'll never understand. Dogs have owners, cats have stuff." So that's the story. Now I'm going to retell using my own words. This is the retelling part. So Alberto and his friend Mimi have a new neighbors, but they don't like them. And according to Alberto and Mimi, the neighbors is big, noisy, smelly, and stupid. They're planning to ignore them. And for a few days they ignore them. When the neighbors go for a walk, they ignore them. When the neighbors was in their garden, they went inside, until one day, Alberto saw one of the neighbors was in his garden. He quickly called Mimi to tell her what happened, and then Mimi told the head of staff to get rid of him immediately. The next few days, Alberto and Mimi saw the neighbors in the garden, until finally they're planning to do the same to the neighbors. At night, Alberto and Mimi went to the neighbor's garden to destroy the flowers. Now let's continue to the third part. So this is the third part, answering the questions and retell. "Mikey, it's time to bed." "Why, it's getting dark out." "Well, do you want to talk before you go to bed?" What do you want to talk about?" The zoo." "The zoo? Oh, that was so fun when we went to the zoo. What did you like the best about the zoo?" The porcupines. They were big, weren't they? And what else?" "Yeah, what else do you remember?" The two giraffes." "The two giraffes? And were they taller than me or shorter than me?" "Over your head." "They were over my head. They were pretty tall. And what else do you remember?" "I remember, didn't you see an elephant?" "What about the elephant? Do you remember? What was he eating?" he was eating, and then Mommy said something happened with the elephant, that it did something. He knew. He threw dirt on us. He did? Oh, how did he do that? With his foot? No, with his trunk. And then you fed some ducks. What colors were the ducks? White. And what other animals do you remember? Wasn't there some type of show? Yeah, a bird show. Bird show, huh? What did the birds do? Fly? Oh, they flew around. One flight. You knew? One flew. Were they good birds? Were they naughty at all? One was naughty. What did it do? Did to thing what you blah 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 in the blah 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 the meant what it could not do. Uh, okay. And then you saw some butterflies, didn't you? What colors were they? After the bird show. After the bird show, you show them. You saw them. And were the butterflies flying around all over the zoo? They're inside. They were inside. What? A little building? What was the building made of? What is made of wood? What was it made of? Oh, made of glass. And couldn't the butterfly fly out of the glass? No. Oh, what stopped them from flying out? The air? Oh, the air. Oh, there was air coming down? Oh, well, that's great. Well, it's time to go to bed now. Sleep tight and don't let the bed bugs bite. Good night. Good night. So that's the story, and I'm going to answer the question in the next slide. So these are the answers and also the questions for the part 3. So number 1, what did the boy like best about the zoo? The boy liked porcupines. Number 2, what did the elephant do at the zoo? The elephant threw dirt at them. Number 3, what can we infer from the bird show? The bird is naughty. It did something to the man. Number 4, where did the boy see the butterflies? He saw the butterflies inside a building that made out of glass. Number 5, retell the text with your own words, with my own words, and describe the detail about the zoo. So, continue. So this is the questions for number 5. Retell the text with my own word and describe the detail about the zoo. So I'm going to retell first, and then I'm going to describe it. So there's this kid who couldn't go to sleep, and his father got inside his room to help him sleep, of course. The father talked with him for a few minutes. They talk about when they go to the zoo, and from the conversations we can understand that the kid liked the porcupines. They also see giraffes, elephants, ducks, birds, and butterflies. After they finished talking with each other, the kid finally asleep. Now I'm going to describe the zoo. So in the zoo there are porcupines and giraffes and elephants. There are also ducks, birds, which they also watch the bird show. Also a huge glass-made building with a lot of butterflies inside. So that's all for today's task. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed it like I enjoyed doing it, and good evening and goodbye.